Name me one part of the world where America is stronger and safer than they were before Barack Obama was elected president. Name me one instance where America is stronger and safer because Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. The answer is we're not.
Senator Marco Rubio calling out the White House for a lack of leadership on foreign affairs. Time now to ask him 4 questions for the next 4 years. The segment that gives you the chance to ask White House candidates about the issues that really most concern you. And obviously, Senator Marco Rubio is our guest today. Senator, nice to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Just a reminder for our viewers, we like to get through 4 questions. Hopefully we get through a lot more, but this is purely their questions that we like to ask you, put them in a little context, bring in some breaking news, and we have ourselves usually a really fun time. So I'm going to start off with the news of the day. Turkey has shot down a Russian jet. We know Turkey is a member of NATO, and there's a lot of statements coming out really within the last 10 minutes from all sides about what should be done. Rudy, one of our viewers, says this: is Turkey still an ally to Senator Marco Rubio? How would President Rubio handle what happened overnight?
Well, first, Turkey is a member of the NATO alliance, and so if the NATO alliance is to remain vibrant, then we have to live up to our commitments in that alliance. We can't decide that we're not going to work on behalf of one of these countries. Do we have concern about things that are happening in Turkey? I absolutely do. Erdogan has taken that country in a more, I would say, a little bit more radical direction. They've broken from a long-standing good relationship with Israel. You've seen him kowtow to some of the more Islamist elements of their political parties in the country. So there is deep concerns about what's happening internally within Turkey. And quite frankly, a little bit of lack of cooperation on their part in the fight against ISIS up until very recently. That said, they are still a member of the NATO alliance, and if we were not to come to Turkey's defense and assistance in any instance, it would undermine the NATO alliance. And so that's something we need to understand, because NATO is as important today as it's been in 20 years.
For example, if Russia, because Russia's saying today, you know, this is an unfriendly act, this is a stab in the back. If Russia actually takes measures, and we don't know what those are, against Turkey, what does the United States do?
Well, first, it's the reason why I warned about having Russia in the Middle East is so complicated. I warned exactly specifically this could happen, that there could be an incident with Turkey, a NATO ally, that they could have, that they could aggressively fly over their territory and be shot down. They do this to the Baltic states, and obviously they did it in this case when it comes to Turkey. So what would a confrontation look like? Well, first of all, you already seen it, and that is, what will the Russian response be? And this is a critical moment, because if Russia believes that they can respond and retaliate against Turkey because NATO is not going to do anything about it, that they are basically doing is they are making the argument that NATO is no longer viable, that it is a feckless alliance. And so it's important for us to be very clear that we will respond and defend Turkey if they come under assault from the Russians. Otherwise, the entire NATO alliance comes into question.
You know, it's interesting. Dan has a question, just came up on our chat about that. He says, if that's the case and we're forced to defend Turkey, then you have Russia and Syria and Iran on one side. Is that a formula for war?
Well, we would hope it wouldn't reach that point. My sense is that if in fact we were true to our word on and showed that we were going to be supportive of Turkey in this engagement, my sense is that the Russians would not test it. They do not have the capabilities in the region to confront the NATO alliance, particularly the United States, or even the Turks for this matter. And so I don't think Russia, you know, at the end of the day, although Vladimir Putin is a gangster and a criminal, he is also a geopolitical actor who makes decisions on a cost-benefit analysis. And he'll have to do something to save face. But ultimately, he is not going to test the alliance if he believes the alliance is going to stand up to him, because he'll lose in that confrontation, and that would be an even bigger setback for him.
All right, so we'll wait and take a pause at this moment, see which all sides do, and then, of course, what place the United States is. Today, of course, happening right at this moment, the French president is meeting with our president. A lot of conversation, obviously, around ISIS and the Paris terrorist attacks. Sal wants to know, at this very moment, if you were meeting with the French president instead of President Obama, how would you handle it? What is priority number one when it comes to our allies?
Well, priority number one in this case, it's obviously we're in a unique situation where the French have been more forward-leaning than the president has been in the war on ISIS. But I think at this moment it calls and continues to call for what I've been advocating for a while, and that is a true coalition to confront ISIS. And each nation and each part of the coalition has a different part to play. ISIS needs to be defeated on the ground by a ground force. And that ground force needs to be made up primarily of Sunni Arabs, Sunni Muslim Arabs who defeat them on the ground and retake Sunni territory. but they will require air support, logistical support, and special operations support from the United States and from our allies like France and others. And so we would be discussing how to bring that coalition together, how to get more countries in the region to accept refugees, especially Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt, and ultimately how to bring together the air support and the logistical and intelligence support.
Let me stop you there
that the ground force will need to succeed.
We're going to take a quick commercial break in a moment, but Jolie really wants specifics on this. She wants to know, how do you suddenly get these Arab nations who for years have not been involved in Syria or accepting refugees to come to your side and say, yes, President Rubio, if that's the case, we will join you in this?
Well, the truth is these nations have expressed an interest in being a part of such a coalition in the past, the Gulf kingdoms and others, but it will require American presidential leadership. That is the power of America, the power to convene and bring these nations together to confront this. The Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Saudis, they understand that ISIS views their leadership as heretics and wants to overthrow their kingdoms, or in the case of Egypt, their governments. They know there's a real risk here, and I think they are willing to be a part of a ground force, but only if America provides the assistance for that to be successful, like the airstrikes, like the logistical support, and a greater commitment to special operators on the ground. I believe that they will participate. They're not unwilling participants. They just don't trust the president. He hasn't shown any leadership, and they view him as unreliable.
Senator Rubio, a great deal of questions about how we handle Syrian refugees here at home, but also a great deal of questions about your experience and leadership potential as well. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. Be right back with your questions for Senator Rubio and presidential candidate in just a moment. Well, back to our segment that lets you question the presidential candidates directly, and back with Senator Marco Rubio. So I just want to move on a little bit past some of the foreign policy, although we'll bring that up, I'm sure in the future, Senator, and talk a little bit about your experience, because a lot of our viewers have questions about that. Just want to point out you're part of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, the Intelligence Committee, the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, and Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee. So you're a member of a lot of powerful committees in the Senate. Tiffany, though, has this question. She says this: many people say President Obama has done poorly because he is a first-term senator taking the job as president. How is Marco Rubio any different? How would you answer Tiffany?
Well, if you were a liberal, you would say President Obama's been a very successful president from a liberal perspective. I mean, he got Dodd-Frank, he got the stimulus, he got Obamacare, he's gotten 2 unconstitutional executive orders, he got the deal with Iran. The problem with Barack Obama is not that he was a first-term senator. The problem with Barack Obama is that his ideas don't work. Barack Obama now has 7 years of presidential experience, more than anyone running for president, and he's still a failure. He's still making mistakes. So it's not the experience after 7 years of presidential experience, is that his principles and his ideas do not work. His ideas of big government, more spending, more taxes, more regulations, they don't work. They've never worked, but they're especially disastrous in the new economy. And his idea that America is the cause of global chaos, not the solution to it, of weakening our national defense, that doesn't work either. So
let's talk a little bit about you, though, and about why you have such confidence that your ideas are right.
Well, it's not my ideas. I have confidence in limited government, free enterprise, and a strong national defense. And the reason why I have confidence in those principles, because they happen to be the principles that made America the greatest nation in the history of the world. We have over 2 centuries of experience now with limited government and free enterprise and a strong national defense. And when we have adhered to those principles in this country, our nation has been successful. It is when we have abandoned those principles that we have been unsuccessful. And that's what's happened over the last 7 years. So it's the principles I have confidence in, and I also have confidence in applying those principles to the challenges of our time, which is what my campaign is trying to do. We are trying to take our conservative principles and apply them to the unique challenges of a new era in the history of the world and of our country, and from it, find the solutions to the problems that we confront. And quite frankly, a lot of it begins with acknowledging that not every issue in America has a federal government solution.
Well, let's talk about one.
Most issues don't even have a government solution.
Let's talk about one, and there's 2 final questions here. I'm going to try to do one, and then we'll get to one on the economy. Some would say that the challenge really of our time is national security and is terror. And that's something that one of our viewers has a question about, what qualifications you and your team specifically have to deal with the issue of terror. How can you promise the American people that you yourself can protect them?
Well, if you look over the last 4.5 years, no one in the presidential race has shown better judgment or been more prescient on the issues we're confronting than me. I have been warning about what's happening now. I've been warning about it since 2012. I warned about Russia going into the Middle East 2 weeks before it actually happened. Because one of the most important things the president has to be able to do is the president has to be able to anticipate, not just see what's before them, but see what's around the corner in order to address it before it becomes a full-scale problem. So if you look at over the last 4.5 years, I have consistently warned about these things, and I have outlined what we should do instead. And this argument about putting together a coalition to confront ISIS, that's not just what I said after the Paris attacks. I've been saying that for the better part of a year and a half. When the president was calling ISIS the JV team, I was warning that this group was a very dangerous group that had the capability to grow rapidly. So not just in these debates and during this campaign, but over the last 4.5 years, I have shown better judgment and better understanding of these issues, quite frankly, and with all due respect, than anyone else running for president.
I see. So what you're saying is that in order to face the terror threat, you have the foresight that perhaps other candidates do not. And one of the big issues that our viewers are talking about as well has to do with the economy and how that affects our national security. And they're wondering about your foresight on that as well. Eric from Instagram wants to know this. With $20 trillion of debt as a national security issue, that's what he's putting the number at, how in the world are we going to start cutting our debt? Where do you even approach that issue?
Well, first you have to understand our debt is important as a percentage of the overall size of our economy. We're always going to have some level of debt, but it can't be so big the way it is now. It almost equals the size of our entire economy. We have to deal with what's causing the debt. And what's causing our debt long-term especially is the way Social Security and Medicare are structured for future generations. Now, we don't have to change anything for people that are on it now or people that are about to retire. But my Social Security, my Medicare, and my kids' Social Security and Medicare is going to have to work differently than it does for people that are on it today. Instead of retiring at 67, I'm going to have to retire at 68. If I've been financially successful, my Social Security benefits are not going to grow as fast as someone who's made less money. My Medicare could very well be the option of using it to buy a private plan that I like better. These are not unreasonable changes, and if we make them, we can save Social Security and Medicare, bring our debt under control, and not have to change or disrupt anything for people that are on it now or people that are about to retire.
But we should expect some changes.
Well, their changes are coming one way or another. These programs will either go bankrupt or we will save them. And so my point is that if we deal with it now, it will be less disruptive. We don't have to change anything for the people that are on it now. But those programs will definitely look different for you and for me and for our children and grandchildren of this generation.
And Rick was concerned about that. I'm glad you were able to address that. Social Security, he's 57 years old, so he was a little concerned about what exactly your plan is, and hopefully we'll have time to talk about it a little bit more in the future. Senator, before we
it won't change for him.
It won't change for him. Before we let you go, it's going to be Thanksgiving. No. It'll be Thanksgiving. I know family is so important to you, and one of the things that you have talked about recently and have talked about consistently on the campaign trail is about your father. And I know there's a new ad out today that really talks about the story of your father. And I just want you to reflect on this, if you could, just for a moment. I mean, what is Thanksgiving like in the Rubio household, and how does it feel to not have certain members of the family around to watch you go on this incredible journey?
Well, you know, the ad at the end of the day is really not about my father. It's about America. The point I'm making is that it's the only country in the history of the world where he could have done what he did for us, work as a bartender and leave us better off. Where else in the world could he really have done that? As far as not having our family members, you know, obviously as a Christian, I believe that we are all surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who are cheering us on to finish strong this race that's called life, and that we're all going to be living together in eternity in a new world, in a new heaven and a new earth that Jesus is going to bring about when he returns. But as far as what Thanksgiving is like in our home, it's very typical. You know, I have a lot of teachers in my family, so it's always interesting to hear them and talk about the issues that are happening in our school systems around the country. But we try to come together and be thankful, watch as much football as I can get in, and just to spend time in a truly unique American holiday in which the whole nation stops to give thanks for our blessings as a nation and individually in our lives. We should give thanks every day. Well, but the fact that we as a nation dedicate one day to gratitude is I think, a great testament to our country.
And a nice day for football. I'm sure you could use a little bit of a break from the campaign trail. Yeah. Senator Rubio, great to have you on the program. We look forward to having you back. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, as we approach Thanksgiving, we also have to talk about terror. And President